to talk a little bit about the recent show you just did, Miami Ink.
Yes.
You were on that, and you got some ink done.
Yes, I did.
So that was very cool. Talk to us a little bit about that and that experience, and what brought you to them. How did you meet up with them in the first place?
Well, it's a funny story and interesting because I found that so many things in my career have been just things that just kind of happened, and I really didn't have to force them to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And and it's a lot of more than we could probably have time to talk about today. But we were actually in Miami on a business trip. I was not down there to do the show. I was down there for meetings and to go to the studio. And I was there for about 7 days. And the last full day we were there, my assistant was with me, and he said, "Man, you've been thinking about getting a tattoo. You should get on that show." Because some of the times when we walked to these offices, we had to walk right by the shop. Mm-hmm. And I had thought about it. It was kind of a faint thought in my mind, and I was like, I don't know if I really want to do that. Kind of chickened out, And he said, "Listen," and interestingly enough, there's a juice bar. I know it sounds like a weird story. Right next door, and he said, "Let's get some drinks. It's really hot out here." So we go in there. When the cameraman walks in, and my assistant, starts talking to him, and he's like, "How do you get on the show?" And one thing just led to another, and within about 20 minutes, we had met the producer of the show. Mm-hmm. And she said, "Well, what's your deal? Like, what do you do?" So my assistant shows her a copy of a magazine that I was in, mm-hmm. and I had this crazy photo where I look like, a pretty bad dude, I left out a word there for it. Yeah. So, and she was like, "Can I have this magazine?" And I said, "Yeah, of course." And she said, "Can I have your number?" And called me back the same day, probably within about an hour. And she said, "We want you on the show." And of course, she had asked me why to get the tattoo, and obviously it's a tribute to my parents and my grandmother that passed. And and they were into it, and I never had to do an audition, which was the normal process. Yeah. So whether I'm supposed to be saying this or not, I don't know. But they put me right on, and it meant a lot to me, not just because of what the tattoo symbolized, but also because I worked very hard to get to where I am, and the cool thing about it to me was, of course, they did mention my physical situation, mm-hmm. but the majority of it was this guy, he's here to do this for his family, but he's a successful music producer in mainstream music, and it's just, and the attention is like, I mean, I get a lot of attention anyway, which is good in my business, but that just shot it through the roof. Mm-hmm. Like, we get MySpace hits like crazy, and emails and all kinds of things. It's been really great.
Awesome. Well, that sounds like a lot of fun.
It was.
Yeah. So how many years have you been producing? I know that you said you've been involved with music since you were young, but when did you actually know that producing is where you wanted to take your career?
I think in college, when I was playing guitar there was a hip hop group that was a live band, mm-hmm. hip hop group, and I played guitar for that band, and we just started. We got to a point where we wanted to record material, and I had some equipment to record, so I started helping them put the record together. I was playing on the records, but I was putting them together, and once the album came out, and everybody said, "Well, who put it together?" And I'm like, "Well, I kind of did." And they're like, "Well, you're the producer then." And I was like, "Okay, whatever that is." Yeah, okay. I mean, I knew what that was, yeah. But I had never been around any producers, so it was kind of new to me. I'm like, okay, so that's what a producer is. Okay, so, and that's just where it kind of picked up, and just word of mouth. I started working with singers, and and it just built and built and built, even to this point, to where now I've moved up to, I'm actually writing and local arranging for other artists, and doing a lot of things I never thought. I mean, not just the production that I do, but everything from writing songs and arranging vocals, producing the songs, and mixing the songs, like songs all the way through from start to finish.
That's beautiful.
It is a beautiful thing.
What an accomplishment. Excellent. So another thing I want to talk about is, briefly we had mentioned earlier about the independence that you have, and that's something that I share with you. I go places and people say, how did you do this by yourself?
Right.
You come in contact with that a lot, and just it is a challenge to go some places, especially when there's a lack of access or a lack of help for that matter. Is that a big barrier in your travels in your field, or do you find that most of the time people are pretty helpful and you get along with it okay?
Actually, that's the thing. I've had so much. I don't know if it's luck. I don't know. But I think it's just. I really don't know what it is, but it really hasn't been a problem. And sometimes I actually think about that, especially when I started traveling quite a bit about 4 or 5 years ago, and flying all over the place. And before I had an assistant traveling with me, and it was just like, oh, I'm gonna do this. And I've always been like that, where I never really thought about it. I was just like, well, I think it's because the thought in my head never came like, why not?
Yeah.
I mean, I never think that. I never think, why can't I just go to the airport and get on a plane like everybody else does? I do it, so I did it, and I just never questioned it, And I think when you come up with that attitude and that, and obviously understanding that there may be people that will be uncomfortable with that, but you have to comfort them in some kind of way, respectfully, and look at it from their position. Like, okay, this might be strange for them to deal with, but you have to just be fair with people and, honest and not be rude with them, because they're doing a job too.
Absolutely.
But I really find that when you're sincere in what you do and people really see that just doors open. I don't mean maybe just literally, but but in every way, just when people say, wow, this guy, I've been to airports, some airports so many times that people know me and they say, oh, that's that guy, Simon, he's a record producer, he does this thing, he's very successful. And I think there's a bit of everyone that wants to have a hand in that, and I let them know that too. You gotta let people know every little thing. If they help you, if they get your chair off of the airplane without busting it up too much, if you stand and say, hey, thanks, it can be little things. Just you gotta let them know. You say, I appreciate that, because that's how I get around. You know what I mean? And if things don't go your way, sometimes you gotta understand it's a human element. It's not under everybody's control. Things happen, and people don't do things on purpose. So but you do have to be appreciative of it. And I definitely have been, because some people just have gone above and beyond, without me expecting it, and just helping me with things that is just tremendous.
Great. And you teach them a lesson too with that kind of attitude, going at them with that instead of getting angry with them or expecting them to help you without taking the time to say, thanks, man, I appreciate that.
Right.
The next time somebody like us, somebody needs a hand, they'll be a little bit more comfortable to go ahead and do so.
Right.
So
exactly.
That's great. It's not just for you, it's for the whole world.
It's for everybody.
Yes,
it is.
Okay, so do you want to talk about any artists that you might be working with, or is that on the down low?
I can talk about a few things.
Okay, tell me about a little bit.
There are a few projects. I actually just, once again, mentioning I'm not a record label. I'm not a record label.
Okay.
But I did put out an EP on an artist named Bliss that I produced in Philly. He has an EP out right now worldwide. It's on iTunes. It's everywhere, CD Baby. Really great rap artist that I work with in Philly. Also, I just produced 5 songs for the new George Tisdale record, which comes out in 2008, in which I do believe I have a nice little majority of the songs on that album. So
all right.
I'm pretty excited about that. There's talk of him possibly going on a tour in Europe in early 2008, but things might change. But not for the record, but for the tour, I'm not sure what might happen with that. Also, I am right when I come back to Atlanta, I'll be working with a group called Vonnegut, who's from Marietta, and they're getting a big buzz. Actually, Big Boy from Outkast has really been backing them big time, and I know Big Boy, and I work with some of his people, and I'm coming back down to work with them, and there's some other things in the pipeline which I can't talk about right now, because but it's been a really good year. But I have, and anybody that ever we keep lists on my MySpace page.
Mhm.
There are, we could sit here for a day and
Yeah.
talk about the records I've done, but there, I keep lists on my MySpace.
And tell people how to get to your MySpace page.
It's www.myspace.com, of course.
Mhm.
Slash Simon Illa, which is SIMONILLA.
Great. So check that out. Go ahead and go to his MySpace page and check it out. And then you've also got a website, right?
Yes, which is also, it's just simonilla.com, SIMONILLA.com.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, that's where people can go to check out the music from Simon Illa and some of his artists that he's producing, and just get a little bit more background info if you want to know more about his past and what he's doing currently.